Gayle, from your assessment, do you agree with Mr. Guindos? No need for a bailout for Spain?
I do agree. I think the perception from outside is radically different from the perception here for a lot of reasons. But Spain has a very notoriously conservative banking sector. They've been working on preparing themselves for the eventual loss of value of their real estate assets for some time. They've set aside, I think, about 14% of GDP in the last 4 years. And I think the banks are not going to have a problem. I'm not sure if that's the source of S&P's alarm. I think it's been overstated.
Well, you think that that's overstated. It's interesting that we see some of the retail banks, their profits crumbling in the domestic market. Do you really think that we've reached a bottom of valuations in property? Because that's the nub of the issue for the Bank of Spain with the banks.
Well, Mr. de Guindos' government required banks this year to provision out of their profits against a loss in value of, it was up to, I think, 80% on land, 30% on buildings. They haven't fallen that much yet. We're at about a 25% loss. So they're a little bit ahead of the game. And that's why their profits are down, because they're having to take so much out of profits for these new provisions. We also have to remember that Spanish banks, the big ones, are very diversified. So only about 20% of their business comes from the Spanish market.
When you look at Rajoy's strategy as he lays it out here, what is the central plank of growth? Where is the growth going to come from, Gayle?
Well, it's hard to impulse growth if you are a government that's required to follow very austere measures, and if the markets are punishing you right and left. So the problem is that the government doesn't really have a choice. I think in the budget and in the labor market reform, they tried to do what they could. There are some tax breaks for small companies. There are some subsidies for new hirings. There's, of course, a labor market reform, which is at the present time destroying jobs. It could partly be to blame for the bad labor market report this morning. But when some months go by, it should help to create jobs. So I think they're trying to do what they can, but it's very hard if you're in this austerity corset. You don't have a lot of room for maneuver.
Let's just talk about that, because I'd like to get your impression of the feeling on the streets in Madrid. Is there a concern that the Spaniards look towards Germany and go, hey, Mrs. Merkel, you have just turned the screws way too hard on us?
That's a danger. I mean, up until now, I think if you look at Spaniards, they are very pro-European, probably among the most pro-European on the continent. Very proud to be in the euro. They don't want anybody bailing them out. They want to stand on their own feet, and I mean, you also have to realize that you have such support for the idea of living by the rules and staying in the euro that you had the largest majority in democracy for a government in this last election that only promised austerity and difficult reforms. So up until now, I think the feeling has been very, very positive. The thing is that as one punishment comes after another, and as the risk premium spreads, and they don't seem to feel any sympathy coming from up north, I think this could change. It would be sad if it did, but I think that will be in the works.
Gayle Allard, an economist at IE Business School, thanks for your insight into Spain.